I'm Allison from Learning at the Primary Pond. I'm a literacy specialist, and in this video, I'm going to explain exactly what steps you should take first when you're working with a child who is struggling with reading. Before we dive in, if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, go ahead and do that now, and then also hit the little bell so that you don't miss out on any of the brand new videos that I post about teaching literacy. Now, as I'm sure you know, for some kids, reading comes easily, but there's a good portion of kids, 20, 25%, even up to 30% of kids who do have a hard time learning to read. And these kids struggle with decoding, fluency, or comprehension, or all of the above. But what makes all of this so tricky is that sometimes a reading problem will present itself and look like one thing, but there's actually a hidden root cause underneath that isn't so obvious at first. So for example, let's say you have a second grade student who's struggling with fluency. You might think because their words per minute that they can read is low, oh, I need to work with them on building fluency and getting them to read more quickly. And that may be true. But if they are struggling with decoding the words and perhaps phonics and even phonological awareness, then that's actually might be what is causing the fluency issue. Or take, for example, a fourth grade student. It looks like they're struggling with reading comprehension. They can't answer questions about text. And so you might think, okay, let's work on comprehension. And yeah, it's good to work on comprehension, but what might be underlying that is that they're having trouble decoding multisyllabic words. And if you can't read the multisyllabic words in a text, then that's going to interfere with your ability to make meaning from the text and comprehend. So that's what I mean by a hidden root cause. Sometimes a reading problem looks like one thing, but underneath it's actually another. Now, I know that decoding issues aren't the only cause of reading problems, but this was just an example to show you how digging deeper is so important so that you know exactly what to focus on with a child. I'm curious, were you trained to diagnose reading problems like this to really go deep in your teacher training? Let me know in the comments if you were. I know that personally, I really wasn't. I didn't, learn this until I sought out additional training on my own. And after I understood this, I knew that I wanted to teach it to other teachers because so many teachers just don't get that type of training. So I'm excited to show you how to dig deep and start with struggling readers by finding the root cause of their reading issues. Okay, so let's start at looking at this document that I have. It comes from the Reading Intervention Collaborative, and I'll include a link in the caption so you can learn more about the RIC. But in this document, it covers my Find the Why process. And I call it Find the Why because it's all about, again, digging deeper and starting with what is really going on with this child so that I can use my time appropriately to best help them advance in their reading, okay? So this document, I know that you can't see it, but I will read the columns to you. And so there's 4 columns, and the first column is question. So in this column, you're looking into things like, okay, how is the child's phonics knowledge? Or, are they meeting benchmarks in phonological awareness? So it's kind of like what I call an investigation, things that you're investigating to find out. In this column, it says how to assess. So when you have this document, if you're in the RIC, then it will tell you use these assessments, or, it might be something that we have in the resource library for you, or it might be something that we link to that you can use to find the answer to this question. Then the next column says student's result. That's simply where you, mark off or do this digitally based upon how the student does in the assessment. And then there's an instructional focus, which then tells you, okay, based upon this area of need, if they're not, meeting benchmarks, then this is what you want to focus on with the student. So this is how the document is organized. And I think it will be the most helpful if I just go through an example with you, okay? So let's say that you are noticing that a student has a lot of trouble with phonics or just decoding words, or maybe you have a nonsense word reading assessment that your school required you to give them and they didn't do well on that. Or maybe they're just struggling with reading fluency, they're not reading enough words per minute, maybe they're making a lot of mistakes. Or even they're struggling with comprehension. When a child is struggling with comprehension, I always look at decoding because yes, it could be a language-based comprehension difficulty, but again, like I said earlier, if you aren't digging in and figuring out, can they actually read the words of the text, then, we're leaving out a really important part. So let's say that your student is struggling with any one of those things or multiples of those things, right? So we want to investigate, and that's exactly what this document helps you do, okay? So there are certain, and again, I'll read this to you because I know you can't see it. There are certain general boxes that I always want to tick off, like, okay, is their primary language something other than English? Even if it seems like, they speak English well, obviously, if they're learning English as a second language or they speak something else at home, then that can of course affect their reading. So that's something that I just want to make sure to make a note of here. And then number 2, has the student had explicit systematic instruction in phonics and phonological awareness? Because if they hadn't had that core instruction, then of course it would make sense that they're struggling. Number 3, vision and hearing. Always want to make sure that those are, squared away and we're good to go there. So these are just some general things. And then I get into more specific questions. So how are the students' phonological awareness skills? And I tell you how to assess that. And then you're looking to see, not, yes, the scores on the test are important, but what's really important is you want to pull out and say, are they meeting or exceeding expectations? Are they slightly below expectations? Are they far below expectations? And then based upon that, it'll give you instructional feedback on what to work on. And I give you a link to the assessment that I recommend here too, which is free. Okay, next up we have letter sound fluency. So this, I say, don't worry about assessing this if the student is reading at a late first grade level or above. But what can happen if they're reading on a first grade or kindergarten level, their letter sound fluency, their ability to say the letter sounds quickly and accurately enough, that is going to impact their ability to decode. So if they're not reading at a late first grade level or up, I always have you assess for letter sound fluency, because again, that's another one of those sneaky things where you might not think it's an issue, but it very much could be an issue. Next up, we have how is the student's phonics knowledge? And for this, I have some recommended links for you. I like to do a real word reading test, which is actually coming into the next question, but I also like to do nonsense word reading, because with nonsense word reading, they're not going to have encountered those words before because they're not real words. So that way you can kind of separate out, okay, are they where they should be with their phonics knowledge so they can decode, right? Even if you are giving them words that they've never seen before. But then I also do like to do a real word reading test and a word spelling test, because in those I'm kind of looking for the specific phonics patterns or skills that they're struggling with. So in the RIC resource library, I have a word reading test with words that cover all different kinds of skills. So then you give it, and based upon that, you can see, oh, we need to work on silent E, or we need to work on CH, or, something like that. Okay, so we examine phonics, and then we also look at reading fluency. So I would typically only do this in first grade and up, but you're gonna give them a reading fluency assessment. You're not just looking at reading speed here with what I recommend. You're looking at reading speed, but you're also looking at reading accuracy, and you're looking at expression and smoothness. So all of those things go into their fluency, okay? And then I have an optional high frequency word knowledge question. But in all of these things, as you can see, I really broke it down. So instead of just saying, oh, this child isn't reading fluently, well, why? These investigations will help you dig in and pinpoint the root cause. In this document, there's more than just the decoding stuff. I also have a whole comprehension investigation set, and that's really key because you are going to use, if you use this process, you're going to use a listening comprehension assessment to really be able to differentiate, okay, if I read them the text, is there a difference in their comprehension than if they have to read a text? So really good stuff. And then I also even have, for kids that are just struggling with letter names and letter sounds, the basics, I have a series of investigations there too, because even there we have to dig a little bit deeper to figure out, okay, what specifically is hard for this child, because instructional minutes are so limited, right? That's why I created this Find the Why process. I mean, obviously, yes, to get kids reading where they need to be, but also because we have such limited time with them. So when we're working with a struggling reader, we have to know that we truly are targeting what that child needs to work on. So it is valuable to go through this process. And I don't necessarily go through this for all of my students. Well, I work with struggling readers, so typically I do. But if I were a classroom teacher, I wouldn't go through this process with all of my students. I would just focus on the ones that are really stuck or just not moving forward, okay? Super valuable. We'll tell you exactly what to focus on. Again, this whole Find the Why process is included in my Reading Intervention Collaborative membership. This is a professional learning and resource membership where you learn exactly how to find the root cause of a child's reading problem, and then also research-based, evidence-based interventions, lots of them for fluency, comprehension, decoding, even the alphabet, all kinds of things, and printable materials to support it so that you can implement interventions and get readers on track. This is so much more in-depth than anything that I have available because working with struggling readers successfully does take that extra knowledge and the willingness to go a little more in depth. So if you want to learn more about being a member of the Reading Intervention Collaborative, I will include a link in the caption for this video. And of course, feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that it was helpful to hear me talk through this process. Before you leave, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and I will see you in my next video.